Fiery Commons exchanges. Today saw the Prime Minister grilled over comments reportedly made by his party's biggest ever donor. It's alleged that in 2019, Frank Hester said this about the longest-serving black female MP. It's like trying not to be racist, but you see Diane Abbott on the TV. You just want to hate all black women because she's there. And I don't hate all black women at all, but I think she should be shot. Here's a brief flavour of Prime Minister's questions.
The comments were wrong, they were racist. He has rightly apologised for them, and that remorse should be accepted, Mr. Speaker. There is no place for racism in Britain, and the government that I lead is living proof of that.
The man bankrolling the Prime Minister also said that the member for Hackney North should be shot. Shame. How low would he have to sink? What racist, woman-hating threat of violence would he have to make before the Prime Minister plucked up the courage to hand back the £10 million that he's taken from him?
He might want to reflect on the double standards of his deputy leader, calling her opponents scum, Mr. Speaker. His shadow foreign secretary, the shadow foreign secretary, comparing Conservatives to Nazis, Mr. Speaker, and the man that he wanted to make Chancellor, talking about lynching a female minister. His silence on that speaks volumes.
The gentleman in question apologised for being rude. He wasn't rude, he was racist, he was odious, and he was downright bloody dangerous. Now, on Monday, the number 10 said, we've seen an unacceptable rise in extremist activity which is seeking to divide our society and hijack our democratic institutions. Isn't extremism that we should all be worried about the views of those Tory donors that we've read about this week?
Prime Minister. No, Mr. Speaker, there has actually been a rise in extremist activity that is seeking to hijack our democratic institutions.
We asked the Scottish Conservatives to put someone forward for interview this evening. They were unable to do so, but told us that the Scottish Party has never accepted a donation from Frank Hester, and the UK Conservative Party should carefully review the donations it's received from him in response to the remarks. Well, we reflected on the row with the Equalities campaigner Talat Yaqoob and TalkTV's chief political commentator Peter Cardwell, who's worked as a special advisor to 4 Tory Cabinet ministers. Rishi Sunak has condemned these reported remarks as racist and says the donor has shown remorse. That's not enough for you though, Talat, is it?
Well, I think it's certainly not enough, because what this indicates is another example of really embedded behaviours, attitudes and language across the Conservative Party and indeed around it with donors and influencers. This isn't the first issue of its kind, and I think it's taken so long for Rishi Sunak to say that it was racist. Before we were just told that it was rude. We've had no real apology or acceptance of the violent racist language that was used against Diane Abbott and referred to all black women, and indeed since then more has come out about different minoritised communities. That's not enough. There needs to be a full-scale review of the culture, behaviour and language that exists in and around the Conservative Party.
Peter, what do you think about the way Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives have handled this?
Appallingly. This has been very badly handled, not just on a moral level, but also on a communications and PR level. It is so abundantly clear that this language was racist. Why on earth was that not said at the start? And secondly, the question comes about whether any political party should be accepting money from someone who thinks these remarks are okay to make. So that's another big issue as well.
And Peter, Sunak's showing no sign of handing the money back though, is he?
I think he will have to either hand it back to Frank Hester, or either the Conservative Party or Frank Hester will have to make a substantial donation to a charity like Women's Aid, for example, or an anti-racist charity, to be very clear that this money should not be used for political purposes. It's a lot of money, especially in political terms in this country. It's about half of what even may be used for an entire general election, but it's so tainted that it would be an absolute disaster for the Conservative Party to use it in any way.
I should point out that Frank Hester has apologised, but not admitting to using these actual words. But Talat, in terms of this donation, what do you think Rishi Sunak should do?
Well, I think it makes sense, certainly, to return the money. I think a donation to charity is all well and good, but I go back to what was said before. Apologies about rudeness, but not an acknowledgement of racist language, and that this is one indicator. If Rishi Sunak wanted to lead by example, as any leader of political party should, and certainly a Prime Minister of a nation should, he should be calling for an investigation into the multiple examples of bigotry, of racism, Islamophobia that has existed in recent weeks as well with the Conservative Party. It's more than this one-off incident.
Yeah, and Talat, I was going to say that Sir Keir Starmer has attacked the Prime Minister in this, but is it not the case that the problem of racism extends beyond the Conservatives?
Well, right across political parties, we hear particularly from women of colour who, when they're in public life, their candidates or politicians that are elected get disproportionate levels of abuse and often violent abuse. This is a problem across politics, and I don't see any political party leading on it robustly and taking it as seriously as they should. But right now, the question is of the party that is in government, and what they do has such an impact upon democracy and trust in politics. The Conservatives need to show that they take this seriously.
Peter, do you think it's a problem in general in politics?
I think it is in the way that it's a problem in society in general as well. And it's not just about the very thankfully small minority of people who make such comments and think it's okay to be racist, which it never ever is. But it's also the sort of pool in which those people swim. Is there someone who doesn't call it out? Are there people who don't say, actually, this is wrong and shouldn't be tolerated? And for a Prime Minister who talks about the diversity in the Cabinet, for example, the most diverse Cabinet there's ever been, well, actually, Talat's right, they do need to lead by example and say we won't accept money from people like this, and nor should any political party. Keir Starmer over the last 4 years has done an awful lot to attempt to rid the Labour Party of anti-Semitism, and he's certainly made very good progress, but there's still a problem there with anti-Semitism. And really, in political parties, people who feel very strongly about all sorts of issues, there can be no rule whatsoever at any stage for anybody who has any racist thoughts or feelings on it, as well, even worse, expresses that.
Talat, what about the point that Peter made that Rishi Sunak is at pains to point out it is the most diverse cabinet there's ever been?
Well, a diverse cabinet, and a cabinet that acts in an anti-racist way, that actually does something to tackle racism, to tackle Islamophobia, to tackle any kind of bigotry, are two separate things. We might see a diverse cabinet, but that's all we see is the visual, not the actions. Whether it is Lee Anderson, whether it is former comments by Suella Braverman, this is a Conservative culture problem, a political culture problem, and a diverse cabinet that continues that pattern is no use to anyone.
Talat, you say that there should be an investigation, but beyond that, what can be done? What should we do going forward to try and tackle this problem?
Well, I think there's a few different things that need to be done. As has already been said, we need to think about who we take donations from. There needs to be more engagement with communities directly, not just when we're seeking their vote, but when we're shaping policy, having them involved in how the culture of politics works. But most importantly, we need to showcase that we take this seriously, not just when we're found out, but that we are actively trying to create better cultures, and that we want to take anti-racist approaches that create a fairer society.
Peter, what do you think we should do? Do you agree with Talat there?
Mostly. I don't think the Conservative Party is by itself racist. I think there are clearly members of the Conservative Party who are racist, and as there are probably in every political party, or almost every political party in this country. I think there is a major problem still that's there, and I think that needs to be tackled. But you need swift action, you need apologies, not just for things that have been found out, but for things that have been said. And I think once politics is cleaned up, then people can start to trust in it again. But maybe that's too positive a thought or ideological.
And just in a sentence, Peter, Diane Abbott is currently suspended from Labour over offensive comments she made. She said she wants the whip back. In a sentence, do you think that will happen?
The investigation continues as a matter for the Labour Party. I think it probably will happen sooner rather than later.
OK, Peter and Talat, thank you both very much indeed for joining us this evening.